Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our SA Smart Chats. My name is Natasha Wilkerson. I am the co-chair of SA Smart, the Mayor's K-12 Smart City Challenge. So, as you know, this year's competition theme is water. And to help you tackle this critical issue here in San Antonio, we're talking to a lot of different experts. And you can see here with me today, I have someone from SAWS. This is Anne Hayden. Welcome, Anne. And before I ask you some questions, let me give the students a little bit of your background. So you're from San Antonio. You worked for SAWS for over 20 years. You have a degree in biology and chemistry with an emphasis in communication. You've been able to adapt technical information and issues and make them more understandable to SAWS customers. You handle media relations, crisis communications, and advertising, and have won multiple state and national awards. I am very excited to have you. Thank you for joining us, Anne.
My pleasure. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, this is an interesting topic, this topic of communication. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say. And for the students, I am trying to keep them have an open mind on this issue of water, because there's a lot of different ways and lots of different challenges related to water. So let's start with, what role does communications play at SAWS?
Well, you wouldn't think a water utility does a lot of communications, but actually it's critical here at SAWS. We know that communications is everywhere. It's constant, it's everywhere around us, but there are really two different kinds of communications. There's communicate, as in two or more people having one-on-one meaningful conversations, but then there's also public communications. And that's what we do a lot of. It's purposeful sharing information. And sometimes it's with very large groups, it's in mass amounts, we're reaching lots and lots of people at once, but sometimes it's one-on-one. So it's going through that range of communications, but it's always very purposeful.
And I'm going to share the slide that you provided because I think this is a good visual for the students. So if you want to talk about what we're looking at here.
So this shows the communication methods that SAWS has in-house. These are people that work at SAWS that develop these materials every single day. So you may not realize this, but we have a monthly bill insert that goes out to over 500,000 addresses every month. That's actually a wider circulation than the San Antonio Express News.
Wow.
So it goes out to a huge number of people. Now, what we also see in all these things is how flexible these are. So a printed bill insert that goes out once a month has to have fairly static information. So what we include out there goes out from the 1st through the 31st of the month. The information doesn't change, but a lot of people read it, and it provides a little bit more room for people to find out what's going on. The other extreme of that is social media, and that goes out multiple times every day in multiple venues. LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, more than I can say, YouTube, all of those, Google, it's all on there. And I combined internet and social media, but you get what I mean. It's flexible, it's out there all the time, it's constantly changing. We also have press releases, and we work with the local media to make sure that they have opportunities to ask us, or where we provide stories that they might be interested in. So we're working with them constantly. Then the other extreme of that is a door hanger. We do actually go into neighborhoods and put printed pieces on doors. This typically is very specific to a local neighborhood. It's one-to-one, where we may have construction in an area, or we may be doing a particular type of testing we want people to be aware of. So we do have folks that will go out and hang these door hangers on individual doors. We also do e-newsletters, which is like a conservation newsletters that go out weekly that talk about landscaping ideas, things that you can do to reduce water use, but make your yard more beautiful. We have robocalls. If there's an emergency and something's going on in an area where we want to make people aware of the main break, we'll actually do outgoing calls, and we can draw what's considered, we call it a polygon, and we circle an area in our computer and we're able to make outgoing phone calls to this specific area. We also, this is a good opportunity to tell people to be sure and give us a phone number, because if we don't have your phone number, we can't let you know about an emergency. We have emails now. That's becoming something we use more and more, where we will send out targeted emails. Again, maybe it's to a particular geographic area, or maybe it's to a group that we know may be having financial difficulty, or if there is an interest they've indicated to us, like conservation, water quality, we'll send emails out to them. Then there's our website. Our website has 50,000 different pages on it. It's the mainstay of what we do. It's huge, and you can get more information off of it than you ever imagined. So this is all what we do in-house. We have people that work on this every single day. In the next slide, I'm going to show you additional methods that we use to communicate. So it's all those things I've already talked about. Plus, when we are paying to send information outside, we may be using billboards. Everybody knows what those are. The digital billboards that they have now change every few minutes, so it's able to get more messages on it. Of course, we use print advertising, where we will book ads in local newspapers, TV and streaming. We work with the local stations, as well as the cable networks, as well as, wherever we get an opportunity to run something. Good old radio, that's still around.
Yeah.
And we do book ads on it. That's something that a lot of people ignore. But if you're low tech and you just want to get a basic information out to people that may not have cable, that may not have Facebook or social media accounts, radio is still very effective. Digital is more like Google, something that we're getting on the internet or is targeted with Facebook. So we'll use that via bus wraps. I don't know if you ever noticed those big buses driving around. Most of them have wraps on them with advertising, as well as the bus shelters. Those will have posters on them, as well as if you're riding the bus, there's posters inside. So there may be folks that don't have other opportunities for receiving messages, so we still use those as well. So these combined are ways that we get messages out to customers or people living in the area.
Wow. Yeah, that's really insightful, because whenever I think marketing, I just know what's in front of me. Like I get an email or I see social media. I didn't realize how many channels you have, which leads to the next question on how has communication evolved over time and in recent years?
I'm so glad you asked that. So there you go, Natasha. I don't know if most of the people that are in this group recognize who this guy is. This guy, his name is or was Walter Cronkite. And Mr. Cronkite was considered the most trusted man in America. He was the anchor for the evening news from 1962 to 1981. And in those days, the only way people had to get news was going on to one of the major broadcast networks. And Walter Cronkite was the most successful anchor in the nation. People went to him to get information, and they only could do it once a day. They didn't have hourly or even twice daily newscasts. They had it once in the evening. It was typically around 5 o'clock, and it would run for 30 minutes. And if you didn't watch that, you didn't get to see the national news. There may have been a local broadcast, but it wasn't national and it wasn't as complete. So Walter Cronkite in those days was incredibly influential, and he really influenced the way people thought. And everybody was exposed to the same information on that broadcast network. So it was really interesting to see from there to where we are now. So if you fast forward to today, and we can drop that, but if you fast forward to today, kids watching this grew up playing on games on their iPhones, on iPads, watching streaming video. They may even be creating content on TikTok or YouTube. Paper books or even broadcast networks are almost antiques. So it means that people are more used to very short bits of information, and they don't want to just receive it. people want to be able to receive as well as provide feedback or direction on what they want and how it needs to be voiced. So at SAWS, we really try to adjust to that. It also affects the way you're communicating with age groups. Older San Antonians tend to like that paper printed piece. They like the bill inserts. They like the newspaper ads. They like radio. So if you're trying to get something across to an older group, maybe it's a special assistance program for the elderly, or maybe it's something that has to do with home improvement, that if they have an older home, they may need assistance with and you can help. That's a good way to reach them. If you're trying to reach people who are just buying houses, who are new to the market and who are younger, a print newspaper ad or a radio commercial is not the way to do it. So what we do is we look at who we're trying to reach, and we also trying to look at how we match that up with the media that we're using. So in short, messaging today is more electronic, it's more two-way, but you still are expected to communicate one-on-one. The city, when they talk to us about communications, they still want to know that we can reach out to an elderly person who doesn't get out much. Maybe that's a door hanger. Maybe it's a more expensive way to do it, but that's the least technical way to do it. Or maybe it's a radio broadcast.
Right. And I think this is really interesting for the students to think about whenever they come up with their product or their service, whatever solution they come up with, how you get that message out, because you might have the greatest gadget, but if nobody knows about it, no one's going to use it. And so that's some really great ideas and different techniques and strategies in this marketing world that students probably haven't thought about. And so the next question here is, how does SAWS use social media and technology to communicate? And you shared this photo that many students have probably seen, that is still something that's in my mind. That, I mean, I feel like it's been a year, but it was a very impactful event.
It was. So this picture is from the freeze that happened last February. This is actually from the Time magazine's top 100 photos of 2021. And honestly, every time I see this picture, I just get the shakes because it just brings it all back. It shows what a lot of us went through. There was no electricity. This happens to be of Austin. Austin did have electricity to downtown Austin, but most of the suburbs, outlying areas did not have it. And it shows what happened to many of us is we went out to our cars, we turned on the car to be able to warm up, to be able to plug in our phones and be able to catch up with what the heck was going on and when was it going to be resolved. We know that at SAWS, we saw our social media skyrocket with people trying to receive information. That's a really good example of a situation, it's very situational, where your other methods of outreach aren't working. Newspapers weren't working at that point. You know, maybe some online information, but nobody was being able to get a printed paper to make it work. So they also wanted information faster and very specific to their address. Maybe one neighborhood was getting power and another block within a couple of blocks away was not. So we worked at having additional people working on our social media, providing feedback on when were they going to get water? Water was affected because the power went off. And we know that the best way that we were able to get information out to those folks was through social media. And that reflects social media as being very in the moment, very specific. What we learned from this also though, was that those who weren't technologically savvy, older folks, they didn't have access, or they didn't know that the phone in their hand could provide that information to them. So what we learned from this is that, heaven forbid, if this happens again, we need to be more ready to provide low-tech solutions. And we're working on that.
Well, let's hope that it does not happen again, right? but at least you have a plan. I'm going to stop sharing my screen there for our last question for you. So because you have this expertise in communication, I thought it would be really interesting to hear about part of this challenge. The students need to do some kind of market research to gauge the public's reaction to their idea. Why is this important? Why should they ask people if they would use their product?
Well, whether you are trying to sell tennis shoes or develop viral music, whatever you're trying to do, you need to know if there's a market for it or if people are even aware. And here's the thing, if you're marketing something, you're trying to solve a problem for someone. So you need to find out if people are even aware that they have a problem and what they're willing to do to fix it. So what we do is we have at least once a year, we do market research to see what people are thinking. What is their attitude about things? How do they feel about water conservation? How we're managing their water resources? So my recommendation is when somebody is developing a project, they do market research at the very beginning to find out if there is actually an opportunity for them to create an awareness or create a sale or a product or whatever it's doing, find out if there's really an opportunity for that. Then they want to find out, is what they're saying really affecting the mindset of the person who's receiving it? In my situation, what we do is we say, well, if we told you that you could save water by doing this really easily, how would that make you feel? People may be resistant to it, or they may say, that's a great idea, I'd love to do it. Or they may say, no, it's not worth it. I'm not that interested in it. Right. So you want to find out if there's an opportunity. You want to see if you can shift opinions by what you're saying. And then I would recommend, if they have it, if they can, do another survey after providing this service, this thing, to see what people thought of it when they actually saw it. And that way you can see what's going on, if there's an opportunity, if you're shifting opinion, and then if you've been successful in what you develop.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I know a lot of teams leave market research to the end. So they've fully fleshed out their idea and then they go to the market and see if it's a good idea. But having it early on, even when it's just that initial thought, just to see, you might think it's great, but who's your customer, who's your audience? Do they actually want it or need it? That's really great advice.
Right. And, these days there's some great free apps that people can use just to do, it can just be a snapshot. You don't have to think of it as being, you need tons of people and lots of questions. People drop off if you put a lot of questions on there. Yeah. So but just put a few questions on there and target it towards the people that you want to use this service or this product. Mm-hmm. And we call it a brush fire survey. Go out there, just check it, and then bring it back.
Yeah, great advice. Well, thank you so much, Anne, for joining me. Any final words or thoughts for the students?
Oh, you know what? I envy you just starting your interest in this right now. There's so many exciting things going on. And the opportunities of new things to develop is huge. So have fun and enjoy yourself. This is a great time to develop your skills.
I love it. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.